ideas, and then we'll be able to round it up from there. But just very quickly, what are your expectations from tonight as you've joined, as you've logged into this session, and given the topic that we're discussing, in just like one sentence or one word, if you're able to share what your expectations are for tonight. And as you do that, we will go straight into it once I get a few comments, just to be able to get context around your expectations. But once again, thank you so much to the entire leadership. Thank you so much to everybody in the team for the great work you're doing. I have the privilege of connecting with A+ community on this platform for, I think, the first time. And it sounds very interesting to hear all the great work that is already being done. Listening to the media director speak around the pillars, I was very excited to be able to hear those pillars and see what you are up to and what you're doing. All right, somebody has commented in the section to be a communication specialist. Wow, that's in 30 minutes. Let's see how that goes. All right, anybody else? Oh, you could also just use the mic, please, if you can. If that is quicker for you, just please feel free to use the mic, unmute, and just speak to the mic. Communicate effectively, okay? All right, let's have a few more, one or two more, just to be able to come through. By sharing your expectations, you're already becoming a communicator, because I can tell you right now, there are a lot of you that are asking yourself, should I say it? Should I not? Should I type? Should I not? So bravo to those that have already done so, because it shows that you are communicating, understanding the language of the marketplace. Okay, great. Enhance barriers to communication, daily practice. Daily practices to improve communication skills. Okay, great. All right, I think that those will be good for me, and still feel free to provide your own thoughts around it as we go, and you could also still just be able to share some comments as well as we get along. If you have any questions, just put them in the comment section, and we'll look at them. Understand the importance of communication in the marketplace and see how this impacts investments. All right. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Benjamin Mwape. I am many things. I try not to define and introduce myself, because sometimes I get confused and mixed up as well. But on the professional side, I am a leader. I am a communication specialist, which is essentially my training. So my undergraduate is in public relations. My postgraduate is in communications, media, and public relations. And then also I have an MBA in leadership. I am a pastor, obviously leading the youth ministry in Bread of Life Church International. I also run a company called Inspired Dreams, which is a human capital development agency. We are into management advisory consultancy and organizational development and organizational learning services. My background is I have predominantly spent most of my working life in the development sector, in the international development sector. So I started off, my first job was with NGOs. So I worked a lot with NGOs, but still working as a communications specialist or communications professional, and also doing a lot of fundraising and training as well. So I spent first 8 years of my career in NGOs, then moved on to work for the United Nations, where I had the privilege to work for the last 7 years, firstly with the International Labour Organization, and then with the United Nations Population Fund, again as a communication specialist and a program specialist at some point. I currently consult for the European Union and the African Union on some youth development programs. that an intercontinental program. It's called the Africa Union European Union Youth Cooperation Hub. And I have the privilege to be coordinating that on behalf of the European Union and the African Union. That's alongside leading my own work in the business, but also serving as a pastor. So there's a mix of different things there, and I'll try and use some of that experience to be able to share with you some context and relevant insights in as far as communication in investment and marketplace is concerned. Let me start off by saying that between you and the next opportunity, or what stands between you and the next opportunity, is your ability to communicate. Let's just begin from there. What stands between you and the next opportunity is your ability to communicate. The game changer, or the difference between where an individual is and where they could possibly be, is how they communicate. Communication, ladies and gentlemen, is a fundamental skill that cannot be neglected in one's life in as far as growing yourself, building your capacity is concerned. Everybody must take keen interest to develop themselves in the area of communication. It doesn't matter what your skill sets may be right now, but as far as your growth is concerned, communication is a priority area of investment that you want to focus on in order to enrich yourself and position yourself for greater opportunities. Many people have found themselves caught up in this discussion. Communicators born or they are made. And I normally tend not to get into that discussion. What I always tell people is communication is a skill. And if it's a skill, then it can be developed. Communication is a skill. And if it is a skill, it can be developed. So when you think about communication at any given point, if you are in business, between you and making the sale is your ability to communicate. Between you and making a pitch to get funding for your business is your ability to communicate. If you are prospecting for a career advancement and you're probably looking for a job opportunity, between you and getting that job is your ability to communicate. It basically cuts across every facet of life. That is why I said, what is standing between you and your next opportunity is your ability to communicate. If you're a single person and you want to marry, what would determine whether the lady says yes or no is your ability to communicate. What will determine whether an investor says yes or no is your ability to communicate. What will determine whether a prospective employer says yes or no to your application, to your job interview, is simply your ability to communicate. So we cannot overemphasize the place, the value, and the importance of communication skills in an individual's life in as far as making headways in whatever area of life is concerned. I was sitting in a job interview with one of the former employers I was working for, the International Labour Organization, and we're doing an interview for a particular project, Green Jobs Project. And so we had two candidates. It had come down to two candidates, and we were caught in between two people. One was a fairly elderly person who had quite some great experience. And on the other hand, it was another young person who didn't have so much experience, but was communicating with such enthusiasm and passion about the work that they were being interviewed for. So when we had that tie, we looked at the manager who was going to be managing these people and turned to him and said, you will be the one supervising these people. If you were given a chance to choose between the two, who would you choose? And between the fairly older man who had experience and the younger person that had the enthusiasm but less experience, the manager said, I will go with the person that has the passion and the enthusiasm in their communication, because I will be able to help them gain the experience. But I would rather work with somebody that is passionate and enthusiastic about the work that we're doing. And so the younger person ended up eventually getting the job. What determined that decision was basically how the young person communicated in the job interview. I do a lot of public speaking coaching, whether it's in classes or it's one-on-one. I do a lot of executive coaching for one-on-one executive training. And I recently had a lady come from one of the banks. She had been working towards a promotion for a very long time, very well experienced and distinguished lady in the sector, in the finance sector. And her line manager had been helping her to build herself towards that job opportunity. So at some point, a job opportunity opened, and almost everybody in the bank knew this was her job. She applied for it, went through like 3 rounds of interviews, but eventually did not succeed. And when she went to HR for feedback, they told her, in as far as your technical competency and ability as a finance professional, you were on top of it. We have no doubt about your competence as a finance person. However, the job you applied for is a leadership job, and it needed you to communicate like a leader. Unfortunately, you did not communicate like a leader. And so at that point, what separated her ability to get that job went beyond her financial technical competency, and the game changer or the make and break was her ability to communicate. And unfortunately, because she did not have the skill set, she lost the opportunity for the job. So she came to our office very frustrated and just said, make me communicate like a leader. And we said, well, we will try without getting drowned in your emotions around it. But I share all these stories to reiterate my point. Between you and your next opportunity is your ability to communicate. If you can communicate effectively, the world is yours for the taking. You can access as many opportunities as you would simply by honing the ability to communicate. I have found myself privileged to speak at different global platforms, different forums and conferences. And some of the places I've gone to speak have simply opened because somebody engaged me and listened to me and heard the way I communicated, and they said, okay, we need this person to come. And it was right now, there are many things that I do, and I never even get to be asked for my CV. It's just simply how I communicate. I was doing a retreat for one of the international organizations, the German Technical Cooperation in Zambia, GIZ. And so they had 100 of their staff go to Livingstone. They had already hired a facilitator for their retreat, but they needed somebody to speak to a particular subject that this facilitator did not have the expertise in. So they asked for a recommendation, and for some reason, somebody gave them my name. So I had a 30 minutes conversation with their team, and they asked me a few questions around how I would go about delivering my session in that particular subject that they wanted. And after that 30 minutes conversation, the following day I got an email. We are happy to finalize and proceed with you. Please find the contract and go through it. If you're in agreement, sign it, and we are ready to go. So I looked at the contract, signed it, went, delivered the presentation in Livingstone. It was only after I returned that it dawned on me that these guys didn't even ask for my CV. They hired me and I went and delivered this work without even asking for my CV. There comes a point, ladies and gentlemen, where your CV is not necessarily what you have on paper. Your CV is just how you manifest yourself. Your CV is how you present yourself. That in itself becomes, without a shadow of doubt, a conviction for people to be able to give you opportunities. And it is my hope that for as many of us that are part of this community, as we continue to grow ourselves, we'll be able to get to that place. Now, let me quickly run through 3 fundamentals of communication. Somebody said in their expectations that they hope they can become a communication specialist. I'll tell you, you will need 4 years to do that. But for the purposes of tonight, I want to share 3 fundamentals that you need to pay attention to when it comes to building your communication skills. And I'm sharing these as foundational principles. Of course, there's so much more we can cover, but within the time frame that we have, let's look at these 3 very quickly. Without sounding overly philosophical, I'm going to use 3 Greek words for it, and it's just so it could help you to remember them and be able to retain the information. So the very first thing, or the very first building block you need to be able to build effectively as a communicator is what I call your ethos. Ethos. And ethos is basically an alternative Greek word for ethics. ethics. And what that means is, in my view, communication begins before you open your mouth or before you write anything. We normally tend to think about communication as when you say something or when you write a written communication. But I tell people communication starts before you open your mouth or before you write anything. Your entire life is always communicating. Your entire life is constantly communicating. Whether you're conscious of it or not, it is always communicating. And as the world would have it, the first measure or the first level they will judge you or measure you in as far as your communication is concerned is on your ethos level. And your ethos level has to do with two things primarily. Number one is your character, and number two is your credibility. Your character and your credibility. Two examples very quickly to make a point there. If you came for this meeting this evening and the president was introducing to you your speaker, whom you are listening to right now, and yesterday there was a trending scandal on social media about the speaker, how he did something wrong and how he found himself in some, unfortunate activities. First of all, it's most unlikely that you would have turned up for this meeting, but if you ever did turn up, right now you probably wouldn't be listening to me. What would be going through your minds would be, so what was he thinking, eh? Why did he even do it? You would not necessarily be taking notes about what I'm saying. You would be processing the scandal behind my character, behind my credibility. And so inevitably, people will always judge us first on what our lives present, what our lives embody. So whether you know it or not, your life is continuously communicating. You don't try to put yourself together when an opportunity comes. Your life must continuously be put together, because people that really pay attention will not give you opportunities based on how you presented yourself in the moment. They'll give you the opportunity based on how you've consistently been presenting yourself. And this is why you find that in today's world, some of the recruiters will even go on your socials and check you out in terms of what have you been posting the last 2 years, because you can put up a face in an interview, but what has been your life communicating all along? So ethos is the first level of impact in communication. In other words, don't try to be a great communicator when there's an opportunity. Live your life consistently communicating the right values, the right message about yourself. Talking about credibility, and I'm still on ethos, so I said character and credibility. Talking about credibility, if today you were sick and the police officer prescribed medication to you, would you take it? Maybe not. And not that you have anything against the police officer, but because you do not have the assurance that it's in their credible place to prescribe medication to you. Even if the police officer meant well, without credibility, you may not comfortably receive their communication. But if a doctor prescribed medicine to you, even if you don't know how to pronounce the name of the medication, just because it's the doctor who has prescribed it, you will take it and be very confident and assured that you are taking the right medication. And so it is so with every aspect of our lives, ladies and gentlemen, that our ability to project the right character and credibility on a consistent and ongoing basis becomes very key in how much impact we will have when we're communicating. Whether we're talking about investment, whether we're talking about business ideas, as it were, or just in the marketplace, it is always important not to try and fatten the cow on the day of slaughter, but essentially endeavor to live your life in such a way that on a continuous basis, you are in the right space to be perceived with the right character and to be responded to with the right positivity, because your character and your credibility is constant. Having said that, the second element of impact or the building block for communication is what is known as logos. So there is ethos and then there is logos. And logos has to basically do with your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insights. And I will speak a little bit here around your ideas and how they relate to making money, investments, and succeeding in the marketplace. The world is run by ideas. The world is run by ideas. Everything we interact with in this world is somebody's idea. This platform we are using to interact tonight is somebody's idea. So the world is run by ideas. The more your idea influences many people, the more influential and impactful you become. But to be able to get to that place, you need to be able to communicate your idea in a very compelling way. There has to be an ability to communicate that goes above an average person. And one of the ways you will be able to communicate effectively your ideas is to be able to build your knowledge, is to be able to build your level of wisdom and insight. And again here, many people make this mistake when it comes to communication. When there's an opportunity, we stress about preparing ourselves to get ready for the opportunity. But I always tell people, if you really want to go far in life, communication and enhancing your communication skills must be a natural investment that you do on a daily basis, or something that you pay attention to on a regular basis. And the principle I use is what I call dig your wells before you are thirsty. Dig your wells before you are thirsty. What do I mean? Imagine you are in a desert and you know you're going to be in a desert for some time and there is no water. But there's possibility of finding an oasis in the desert, which is a portion that could have water. The wisdom of living in the desert demands that you identify the place where you can find water as early as possible and secure that place so that in an event when you need the water, all you do is go to that location and draw from it, as opposed to trying to find water when you're thirsty. You are already thirsty, you'll be exhausted, you'll be frustrated, you may faint and collapse before you even find the water. So wisdom demands that find the water first, know where the water is located within the desert, go about your business, but when you are thirsty, just go to that oasis, draw from it, and you can drink some water and get refreshed. That is true of communication. We don't prepare when we are faced with an opportunity. We must continuously prepare to communicate effectively even before the opportunity arrives. And there are several practical things you can do on a daily basis to be able to enhance your communication ability. And one of those is building a strong reading culture. We don't speak about communicating effectively without speaking about building a strong culture of reading. If you must be an effective communicator, you must be an effective reader, a diligent reader. And a reader in this context is be a dynamic reader. Read widely, read beyond your comfortable subjects, and read extensively, because the person who knows the most will always read. The person who knows the most will always read. And this is why you find that in investing, people get duped. In investing, people get manipulated because the person who knows is reading. And they also say the person who knows why is more powerful than the person who knows how. The person who knows why is more powerful than the person who knows how. So many people know the how. You want to invest in this. How does it work? Oh, it works like this, it works like that. Or how does the money market work, for example? How do bonds work? How do treasury bills work? How does the real estate environment work? Many people can easily know how they work, but the person who knows why do we calculate the percentage of bonds this way? Why do we have this structure of investing in bonds? The person who knows the why will always be more powerful than the person who knows the how. And the person who knows the most will always lead. Today, right now, in this meeting, if we said, let us compose a song for the A+ community, we want to have an anthem for the A+ community. No matter who has what pedigree in this meeting, the person who will lead us is the person who has the most knowledge about music. Because even if I am your guest speaker right now, with all the knowledge I have, if I lack knowledge on music, I could attempt to try and start leading us to compose a song. But somebody on this platform who is more knowledgeable about music may put up their hand and say, oh, well, Mr. Presenter, I am proposing that maybe to make this anthem better, is it possible that we start it in pianissimo and then we transpose it to Vonte? And I'll look blank. And at that point, I'll be like, what do you mean? Then the person will be like, okay, let me explain. And before they explain it, they'll be like, let me demonstrate. And by the time they're demonstrating, they've already taken over, they're already leading. So the person that knows the most will always lead. In the marketplace and in the world of investment, endeavor to be at your best in terms of knowledge. Understand, and here's the principle: never invest in what you don't understand. Never invest in what you don't understand. There's so much out there that is, attractive to people, that is, getting people excited about, oh, there's this thing, you make this money, you do this. The principle is never invest in anything that you do not understand. But in order for you to be able to communicate effectively in investments and marketplace, remember you are interacting in a world of negotiations. There has to be negotiation. For example, in the marketplace, if you're getting interviewed for a job, then they ask you, what are your salary expectations? How do you navigate around that? That's a negotiation point. Your ability to communicate compellingly and effectively will determine whether you get the right salary or not. When you are doing business, your ability to negotiate and get the right pricing will determine whether you make more profit margins or not. So communication becomes key in as far as your investment journey and your marketplace journey is concerned, because it empowers you to negotiate. It empowers you to be able to navigate that space. Now, I'm rushing with these things, but we'll pause in a moment and just allow for some questions. The third aspect, so ethos, number one, logos, number two, and the last aspect of the building blocks of effective communication is pathos. So it's ethos, logos, and then pathos. Pathos has to do with passion. Pathos has to do with persuasiveness. And here, anytime you're communicating, always aim for pathos, because pathos touches the heart of an individual. Pathos touches the place of real decision making. Logos has to do with the mind. When you have insights, when you have information, you are touching the mind of the person. But when you're dealing with pathos, you are touching the heart of a person. And one of the things to master in communication around pathos is simply the art of storytelling. If you're going to be an effective communicator and utilize the advantage of pathos in your communication, you need to become a great storyteller. Let me give you an example. I was hired by an executive of a certain company that was pitching for some funding with the UK government. And the executive director had prepared a PowerPoint presentation. And they came and told me, this is what I'll present to the judge, to the jury panel, for them to decide whether they're giving our organization money or not. And so I looked at the presentation, so many numbers, so many statistics. I was like, okay, technically this looks good. But I asked him a question. I said, when last were you in the field? They've been doing a lot of work around helping people in rural areas get title deeds to their land, especially vulnerable women. And so I asked him, when last were you in the field? So he said, oh, I went to Chibombo some 3 months ago. I said, who did you meet among the people who's being touched by your work? And he gave me a story of, well, we met this woman, her name is Miriam, He told me the story. And I said, well, your presentation is good, but I would like to change your entire presentation and make it focus on Miriam. And here's what you're going to say when you go in the meeting. So we rehearsed the things he would say, in addition to obviously the data he had on his slides. But when he went in the meeting, this is what I rehearsed with him to say. And so when he went in the meeting, he gave them the presentation of the data, the numbers, and all of the other things. But then he says to the panel, I recently went in the field and I met one of our clients, Miriam. Miriam is a 65-year-old woman who's got 3 children, 2 daughters and a boy. She lost her husband who left them a piece of land, and we helped them to get title. Ordinarily, in that community, women are disadvantaged to inherit their husband's properties, such as land. And so without a title, it makes them vulnerable and insecure to be able to possess that title. But also the community makes the daughters of Miriam very vulnerable to early marriages and teenage pregnancy. But when our organization went in and helped Miriam to get a parcel, a title deed for her land, Miriam was able to, first of all, be economically empowered as a widow, but secondly, she was able to send her 2 daughters and a son to school, preventing the 2 daughters from experiencing vulnerability to teenage pregnancy and early marriage, which is very rife and rampant in that community. With this amount of money that we've had so far, we've been able to help about 500 people, such as Miriam, to get titles to their land. If you give us this additional money, we will be able to multiply our impact and help 1,000 more Miriams to get their titles to their land and be able to take their children to school, therefore preventing them from experiencing vulnerabilities in their community. Thank you very much. Guess what? He got the money. He didn't get the money because of the numbers, the map that he had of the geographical location where they're working. He got the money because the panel of jury just thought about Miriam and thought, well, if with this money, they've touched 500 Miriams, and we give them this money, they'll touch 1,000 Miriams, let's give them the money. Why? It was a story-centered communication. And for some of you, you could even recognize how you were paying attention to me by reason of me just telling this story. The way you were listening to me before I told this story could have been different, but the moment I started telling this story, you began to pay attention to me more differently. So the point here is to understand that what moves people to make a decision is when you speak to something that resonates with their hearts. If you can touch me, if your communication can touch something that is close to my heart, you will have impact. When Absa was changing from Barclays Bank, I was privileged to be hired to help their HR manager prepare for a national tour to go and speak to all the branches and speak to their staff around what changes the bank was going to go through. So we sat down with him to prepare his presentation and his PowerPoint. And so as part of the presentation, I told him, when you begin your presentation, give the people an outline. Tell them, this is what I'm going to talk about. This is what I'm going to talk about. This is what I'm going to talk about. And as part of that outline, tell them that you're also going to talk about salary adjustments and salary increments, but only talk about it at the end of your presentation. And he asked me, he said, why? I told him, you'll be guaranteed that no one will walk out of your presentation until you are done. So he went and began to make a presentation, and he told them, okay, I'm going to talk about this. And as part of my presentation, I'll talk about salary adjustments and salary increments. And short to what I told him, nobody walked out of the room until he reached the point or the slide which had to do with salary increments. Why? Because it was the closest issue to the hearts of the people. If you're going to win in communication, don't speak in abstract. Speak to what is closest, what is the closest issue to the hearts of the people. If you can speak what is closest to the hearts of the people, you will have impact. If you're going for a job interview, speak to what's closest to the hearts of the people in that company, you will have impact. If you're trying to get investment in your business, you're trying to get your idea to be funded, speak not about yourself, speak about what's closest to the hearts of the people whom you want money from. If you can touch their heart with your communication, you'll be able to connect and resonate with them. This is how politicians win elections. Politicians don't go to Masaiti or to Mandevu and say, When you vote for me in this constituency, I am going to make sure that we accelerate the implementation of the 8th National Development Plan and be able to enhance the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals to accelerate the Vision 2030. Nobody cares about all of those things as much as they're important. All that politicians do is go in and say, when you vote for me, I will make sure you have water, and the people vote. When you vote for me, I'll make sure this road is tarred, and the people vote. Why? Because they speak to the hearts of the people. Whenever you are speaking, your communication will have impact if it speaks to the hearts of the people. And one of the ways to achieve that is to tell stories. That is why, for example, if you're going for an interview, don't just speak about what you would do. Give practical examples. When they ask you a question in a job interview, you must be able to say, well, to be able to achieve that, I'll give you an example. When I worked for this and this company, or when I was given an opportunity to lead this project while I was in university, I was able to achieve these results by doing A, B, and C. You are beginning to bring a practical story to the theory, and that is what catches the attention of the people. So to be able to have impact, it's 3 levels: your ethos, your character, and your credibility, your logos, your depth of knowledge, your depth of understanding. Read as widely as possible. Be a reader, be hungry for knowledge. Feed on the right content. Number 3, your purpose. Don't speak to what interests you. Speak to what interests the other person, whom you want to persuade, whom you want to convince, whom you want to win over to your side. And one of the things I did, for example, when I was working in the fundraising field with NGOs, you would be going to meet one of your donors. And one of the things I'll do is research the person or the individual we're meeting on a personal level. And I'll find out things, for example, like, oh, they like this football team, or they like playing this game. And so when we go in, I'll deliberately mention something relating to that. And immediately you see them spark up, you see them light up and want to engage with you because you've just said something that resonates with their passion, something that resonates with their heart. If you must win in communication, master ethos, master logos, and master purpose, and your ideas will get the attention they deserve. Your ability to navigate in the world of investment will get the attention that it deserves, and your ability to excel in the marketplace will get the ability that it deserves. When I got my first job in the UN, I was overly stressed about how gigantic the environment is. And I began to ask myself, how will I survive? How will I stand out? And one of the things I did was I would leave home and go for work early, avoid traffic. When everybody is stuck in traffic in the morning trying to get to the office, I would have already been in the office at 7 hours. And from 7 hours to 8 hours, I'm reading people's reports. I'll pick a report from this department and read. Pick a report from this department and read. 17 hours when everyone is rushing to go out of the office and get stuck in traffic, I'll remain back in the office for another 1 hour from 17 to 18, pick people's reports and read them. When we go in a meeting, our director will be sitting with all the managers of the different projects and they'll ask questions that the managers are not able to respond to. And I'll put up my hand and say, well, maybe the best way we can navigate around that is to be able to look at the current social protection policy and the latest report around the status of social protection in Southern Africa. There are 3 things that the report highlights, and there are 5 fundamental principles that we can apply to be able to help our government and other non-state actors to be able to enhance their social protection policy. And they go into outlining them. And then you would have the project manager that leads the social protection department look at you and say, who are you? Because how come you know those things and I don't? In my heart, I'm like, well, when you're stuck in traffic, I am busy reading your reports. When you're trying to rush to go home, I am busy reading your reports. And what did that do? It made me stand out. Ladies and gentlemen, knowledge will always be superior. Knowledge will always cause you to stand out. When you are empowered from a place of information, you will be a leader. So with that, let me pause and check for any questions, and then we can hand over to the chair for some wrap-ups. Thank you so much.
All right. Why don't you give a round of applause virtually, of course? What a presentation. Thank you so much, Pastor. Wow. I think my expectation has been met. I was expecting to be a communication specialist, and I think I am one. Wow. Thank you so much, Pastor, for such a profound presentation. Please let the questions begin to pop like corn, and then I'll be able to read them to Pastor. Wow, so many things that Pastor has highlighted. I've actually learned a new language today, and I think we can all attest to that fact. I love the three fundamental principles that we've been enlightened to, which is the ethics, our ethos, our ideas, which is logo, and of course pathos, which is passion, and quite a number of things that Pastor has been able to bring to light. And honestly, personally, I think I love the aspect of ethos, Pastor, that you've brought up, which is ethics. And you highlighted to say communication begins before you write or before you say something. And one of the two things that you resonated very much on this one is the aspect of character and credibility. And I think how does, personally, before we can read the questions that will come in, how does one like really get to build their character and credibility, especially on the aspect of credibility? I think this is something that we are usually lacking, especially as young people, because one person once told me that people are always watching, and so that speaks very much to character and credibility. And just earlier this morning, somebody came to me and they were talking about how they perceive me and how they've been encouraged and blessed by the way I conduct myself and stuff like that. And I was very humbled and really brought down because of what they said. And I think when you are presenting, that came to my mind to say, oh, this is exactly what Pastor was talking about. So like to somebody who may not know how significant is the aspect of credibility and character to us, especially as young people who desire to make an impact in the marketplace.
All right. Thank you so much. Very quickly, to answer your question, I would just say being intentional about what you want to be known for or how you want to be perceived. I think that the starting point or the challenge for many people is that we leave our character and credibility to chance, or we basically leave it to run on autopilot or leave it to run in default mode. You cannot afford to let your character and credibility run on default mode. It has to be intentional. Here's an example. If you go into a shop today and you are looking for a detergent paste, and you found a detergent paste packed in a clear plastic bag, there's no name written on it, there's nothing written on it, most likely you may not be able to buy it because you're looking for something that is defined, something that you either know and have tested, or even if you don't know it, but it's well defined and attractive to you. So for example, if you use Omo or Boom and you're used to those, you go and look for Omo and Boom. But maybe peradventure you find another new product that looks attractive. Because it's well defined, you'll still be comfortable to try it out because of the way it's been packaged and presented. But very likely you will avoid going for the one that is packaged in a clear plastic bag without any name on it, without any label on it. And even though you eventually chose that one and wanted to try it out, what would eventually end up happening is that people will give it a name. Even if it doesn't have a name, people will give it a name. And that's what usually happens. If you don't define things in your life, people will define them for you. If you don't define things in your life, people will define them for you. So when it comes to the issue of character and credibility, be very intentional about being definitive. Who do I what do I represent? What do I embody? And how do I want to be perceived? How do I want to be known? Once you have defined that, it becomes your guiding foundation. Anything that does not align with what you want to be known, you will not associate yourself with. At the point of making decisions, you make decisions based on your guiding values, based on the guiding foundation of what you've decided yourself to be. So when, for example, your friends tell you, let's do this, the first way to sieve and measure your decision will be, how does this fit into my value system? How does this fit into what I want to reflect in my character and credibility? If it doesn't, or if it impacts on me negatively, then I cannot associate myself with this. So for me, it's being intentional and clearly defining what do you want your life to represent from the onset, and begin to build your life around those things. Thank you.
Wow. I love the aspect of clarity that Pastor has just highlighted on being and intentionality. I think this is something that is very key and paramount. The aspect of clarity, we must be known for something. And of course, the aspect of clearly defining, I think that is very, very helpful. Thank you so much for that. So please, I believe we are typing our questions. This is once in a lifetime opportunity where you get to ask, and Pastor gets to answer the questions. So please, let's get the questions coming up in the comment section. And I have another question, Pastor. Of course, this one is actually on ideas. And being somebody who is passionate about ideas, the first instance when you have an idea, it's usually not refined and clear. I'm sure it's something that is big and massive, and you have to go through a process where you begin to refine that idea. So being a person, I believe, who has had quite a number of ideas, how have you moved from a place where you have this idea and really refined it into something that actually is visible, something that is tangible and people are able to see, and is something that is able to run?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, a very pertinent question that we need to look at. In the world of business, there is what they call an ideation process. And you're right when you say the need to take an idea through a process of refinement. And that's exactly what it is. Sometimes you have this big idea, but then there's no clarity around what that looks like exactly. But when you take it through a particular process, it gets more refined, it gets more clearly defined. But one of the things that for me, and I made reference to the issue of ideation process, you can go and read that up really, but one of the things in the steps of the ideation process that I think is important when it comes to ideas is the very first step, being clear about the problem you want to solve. I think the power of any idea is in the clarity of the problem you want to solve. And so when you want to clarify your idea, you always must go back to what is this idea trying to solve? Because there are many good ideas, but irrelevant. They have no relevance in as far as what problem exactly they're trying to solve. So for you to be able to gain clarity in terms of the idea is to be able to go to what problem is it trying to solve. Now, again, when you're asking yourself what problem is it trying to solve, don't just ask that question on the surface. Go to depth and understand, unpack exactly what causes the problem. So go into what is known as the cause and effect analysis. And there are different tools and models that you can use to do a cause and effect analysis. One of them is something some of you may be familiar with. It's called the problem tree. The problem tree analysis. You Google that online, you'll be able to learn more about it. So if you do a problem tree analysis, it helps you to logically and systematically unpack the problem. You begin to look at what are the root causes of the problem, and then what are the fruits? Because sometimes we're addressing a problem, but we're addressing it at the fruits. Now, if you're going to address a problem at the fruits, you are not dealing with the real problem. The real problem is what are the roots? What is sponsoring the manifestation of that problem? So your idea must be able to go through that process of clarifying how it addresses a particular problem. And once that is clear, then you ask yourself, is this relevant for the people? Are there people that want this problem solved? Then you build it from there. Thank you.
Jesus Christ. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Pastor, for that. There are some questions in the comment section. One is from Given Lovu, a medical student, and he says, under the third principle, which is pathos, how does one develop a persuasive character, especially in the field of medicine, where such a virtue may not seem to be much applicable considering the nature of our jobs?
All right, great. Thank you so much, Given. I want to think about public speaking beyond, and I want to encourage you to really think about public speaking beyond sort of just your particular field, as it were, persuasion, beyond your particular field, and see it as an essential skill for navigating through life in its entirety. So quite all right, you may sort of think it is not necessarily a relevant skill, or how do you develop a persuasive character, especially in the field of medicine, beyond just your routine function in the medical field. Think about your entire world, your career in that particular field. When you are persuading, maybe say, your superiors for a promotion, when you are persuading maybe even partners for something, to do something in your career or in your field, you will still need, the persuasive skills. And if you are going to be a leader, for example, in the medical field, you need this persuasive character. You need to develop a persuasive character. Today, people are influenced by persuasive speakers, and so without that, your level of influence is undermined. You could be good. Remember the example I gave of the lady from the bank. You could be good at your technical skills, but there's gonna come a day in your life when you need to be promoted. You may not necessarily forever be in that position. You one day you become the Minister of Health, but when they want to appoint you as the Minister of Health, then they're looking and saying, the way this person talks, they're not persuasive. Whilst they may be good with their technical knowledge of the field, they may not necessarily be persuasive in terms of communicating to their public. So it becomes a challenge. And I think I'm already answering Jemima in a way, which I'm sorry, Chair, I'm taking over the questions now. But Jemima is also asking, does public speaking also contribute to becoming better at communicating in the marketplace? Absolutely, absolutely. You need public speaking skills to be able to navigate the marketplace. Like I said, what stands between you and any opportunity available to you in whatever field is your ability to communicate. So you need to be able to build this public speaking skill. It's a distinguishing factor for many opportunities and for many reasons out there. The other question is, how can you advise someone who is mindful of the three fundamentals, the experience distortion in the delivery of their ideas or what they intend to communicate? I would say practice, Alan. Yeah, practice. Before you go to speak, if you're communicating your ideas, make sure that they're concrete, crystallize them. In public speaking, one of the things they teach is the power of three. The power of three. And you want to do that in many of your speaking engagements. Try and compartmentalize your whatever you want to say into three things at most. The more things you have, the more confusion you will have in your mind in terms of processing those things. but if you crystallize them into 3 ideas, it becomes very easy to communicate and to be able to navigate around them. And the basic example is what you just received today: ethos, logos, pathos. Very concise, very easy to remember, very easy to make reference to. How do you personally stay updated and continually improve your communication skills in a constantly evolving marketplace? Again, we talked about logos. Continue building your knowledge base, but let me add this to you as well. Build your network. Build your network. Speak to people who are knowledgeable about certain things. One of the things I've learned in the marketplace is that many leaders and many people who thrive in the marketplace leverage on other people's information. So you want to leverage on other people's information as well. I had the privilege in 2015 to be part of the team that was revising the National Youth Policy and helping government to revise the National Youth Policy. And during the subsequent elections, one of the people that was standing as Lusaka mayor reached out to a colleague of mine because they wanted to say something in their campaign around youths. And so a colleague of mine told them that they must have a chat with me. They booked for an appointment to have a chat with me. They came to my office and we spent 30 minutes and I ran them through what are the issues around youth in Zambia, what is the new policy talking about, what is missing in the new policy, and we went through the details of all of that. And they told me, thank you so much, I'm rushing to ZNBC for an interview. And so they went to ZNBC, and out of curiosity, I went in the office lounge, switched on the TV, and began to listen to that interview. And this man goes on TV and begins to say, you know, the challenge with our current national youth policy is that it has got these gaps, it has got, and I'm like, wait, those are my ideas. But you see, he was able to, within 30 minutes, synthesize information that I had drawn maybe from the past 3-5 years. So one of the other ways to leverage, to build your knowledge base is to be able to leverage other people's information. Connect with people, engage with people, and you find that you learn so much by talking to other people as well. There's a question around how do I go about the feedback analysis as to whether my communication was effective or not. I'm not sure in what context you're asking this, but let me first of all say it is very important to solicit feedback. Anytime you speak, as much as you can, get feedback. But when you get that feedback, don't let it get to you. Use it to be able to improve. Let it be a feedback that enriches your improvement. Go back and ask yourself, how could I have done better? And it is important in public speaking and in communication in general to always want to improve. They say the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement. You can never outfill the room for improvement. There is always something you can do better. So do get feedback. You can solicit it by just maybe asking 1 or 2 people that sat in your presentation or in your communication. Ask them, how did you find it? And they'll give you, some genuine feedback. Ask them open-ended question. What stood out for you in that? What was confusing? What do you think could have been communicated differently? And they'll give you some of that feedback. How have you been able to develop self-correcting presentation strategies that lessen the anxiety in international assignments in a world of a different cultural diversity? Quite a packed question. How have you been able to develop self-correcting presentation strategies? Okay, the first thing in public speaking, we always tell people when you're presenting or you're communicating, especially at a large platform, is to avoid apologizing. And we see this in a number of people. When you make a mistake, they go, okay, oh, sorry. After some time, oh, sorry. And the reason why people say that is because they know that they're supposed to say something, but they've said it differently or the way they didn't intend to say it. But I always tell people, the more you apologize, the more you undermine your self-worth and impact as a speaker. Instead of apologizing, when you notice that you haven't said something the way you wanted to say it, simply correct yourself by reiterating it in a different way. So if I wanted to say something and I realize, oh, the way I've just said it is not the way I wanted to say it, you could just then use a connector and say, to put it in another way, or just to emphasize this point, let me say it this way, and then re-communicate it the way you want to communicate. And the point is that most of the times, the mistakes that we make in public speaking, the audience does not know about them. The audience does not know it's the mistake because it is you that plans to say it that way. but your audience does not know that you planned to say it that way. So whether you say it a different way, the audience will not know. They'll just think that is the way you want to say it. But because you at the back of your mind knows that that's the way you wanted to say it, so you now begin to beat yourself around and say, you shouldn't have said it that way. You are supposed to say it this way. Don't say that. That joke is dry. Say this other joke. It's not funny. You should have said it the other way around. You should have cracked it like this. It is you that planned it like that. So you are being too hard on yourself because there's a way you planned to say it, and now you are saying it in a different way. But remember, your audience does not know what you planned to say. So when you make a mistake, most of the time, the audience does not know it's a mistake. That is why when you keep on saying sorry, they're now the ones asking themselves, why is he apologizing, or why is she apologizing? We can't see the mistake. So all you do is navigate around it by just simply correcting yourself and give yourself a second chance to say it better. But if the chance is already gone, lessons learned, grow and build from there. I think in my journey of public speaking, there are some occasions when I've delivered a presentation, I'm like, that was dry. That was not to the best I should have done. And I'll feel bad about it, but move on. I know that sometimes when you're feeling bad about something, I always tell myself, in 5 minutes, I'll not be feeling the same way. In 10 minutes, I'll not be feeling the same way. In 1 day, I'll not be feeling the same way. So eventually, that bad feeling goes. And then you move on, grow from there, and you build better for the next opportunity. Thank you so much. I'll hand over back to the chair.
All right. Thank you so much, Pastor, for that wonderful presentation and in the manner that you've been able to answer the questions that have been popping. We are incredibly blessed and enriched. Thank you again for being able to find time to just come and be with us as the A+ community. Can I see some reactions, guys? I think, can I see some reactions? Can I see some reactions? All right, great. By a showing of hands, can I see how many people would love to see Pastor again? Pastor, that's not me. Those are not my hands. I'm sure you can tell. All right. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. We are incredibly blessed. We are incredibly enriched, and it is a huge honor and a privilege to have you in our midst and just to learn from your wealth of knowledge that you've been able to gather over the years. And we thank you for the inspiration that you've been. And thank you, Maparo Simfuke. Maparo Simfuke says, come back, Pastor. All right. Okay. So thank you so much once again. And to everybody that joined, we are so glad that you could join us. I believe you can testify that this has been a very enriching presentation, and these are principles that apply to every individual regardless of the program or the career that you are in. And so I believe that this is information that we are really going to be able to apply in our various fields, be it medicine, engineering, nursing, teaching, and the likes. So thank you so much, Pastor, again, and for everybody that joined us. We started with a prayer. Allow me to close with a prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for tonight, and we are grateful for the manner that you have been able to teach and pour into us regarding communication skills and investments and in the marketplace. Thank you, Father, because you have called us to go on top of the mountain of business and on the 7 mountains of influence. And thank you, Father, for enlightening us today that indeed we need communication skills if we are going to climb these different mountains. In the name of Jesus. Now, Father, we pray that you allow everything that we've been able to listen to to prosper in our lives, in the name of Jesus, that we may be better positioned for influence and for dominion and for power. In the name of Jesus, we give you the praise and we give